We've been Christians now about 6 years, and before we came to be Christians, we were all drawn into a friendship through some pretty weird circumstances. About 11 years ago. Boy, is it that long? 11 years ago, man.
Yeah, I was in junior high school. I was young.
Here we are at the 1998 Love's reunion tour.
We met each other, seriously though, in the midst of our drug psychedelic period when we all found out that we had a common interest in finding out more about this life and what it meant, who we were. And we felt that drugs, that psychedelics, LSD, mescaline, and all that stuff were a part of God's plan in the last days to reach men who could be reached through no other means, we thought. We thought that LSD was the key to spiritual knowledge. And we got involved in all the things that go along with the drug world, the Eastern philosophies. I was a vegetarian, and at one point in my life, I weighed 122 pounds. I was on Dr. Ehret's mucusless diet healing system. First of all, you give up meat, right? Then you give up dairy products. Then you give up all starches like potatoes and rice and bread. And eventually you're supposed to get on green leaf vegetables, fruits, and nuts. Then when you really get it together and you really start getting purified, you just eat fruits and nuts, okay? Then when you really get it together, you don't eat. Anyhow, we were involved in that whole thing, thinking I thought the Beatles were second messiahs or something, and that their albums like Sgt. Pepper was coming down with this spiritual wisdom, and then Magical Mystery Tour came out, and it had stuff like, Blue Jay Way on it, where it said, all my friends have gone astray, and please be home soon, and come over, to where I'm at, like George Harrison had found the inner light or whatever. And I really thought the Beatles had discovered something, and they were trying to convey it to us in little doses, And then my friends and I, we got into the next album, which came out was the White Double album, right? And we went to the store to get the new Beatle album, and we discovered it was just totally white with no printing on it, just embossed letters said the Beatles. And we just blew our minds. We went, wow, man, this is the spiritual one. Look, it's all white, man. Only the Beatles were putting no printing on their album, man. Oh, it's so cool, So we took it home, and we put it on I lived in Hawaii at this time, and this wasn't with any of these guys. It was with some other friends of mine. And we put it on, and we're waiting to hear the spiritual message come forth. And we're all kind of looking at each other, going, what's happening here, And we're trying to act like we're getting something out of it because nobody wanted to admit that they weren't heavy, Anyhow, how much can you get out of Rocky Raccoon after all, Anyhow, I felt ripped off by the Beatles. I felt that the Beatles had copped out, that if they did know anything spiritual, they were afraid to tell it, and perhaps they didn't. And so we got obsessed with this idea of having a band that could communicate God to people. And we started, in the middle of our psychedelic period, a God band, actually, that was called Love Song. And we would go into nightclubs and we'd play Proud Mary and all that stuff you have to play, Knock on Wood for the dancers. And we'd throw in our God songs in the middle of all this, And a lot of them had Jesus' name in it. And this was long before Norman Greenbaum's Spirit in the Sky or James Taylor came out and said Jesus in a song. And everybody goes, oh, James Taylor, the new prophet. And it was long before that, And people were just not used to hearing Jesus' name in a rock and roll band in a bar, And we would go out and evangelize people on our breaks. We would go out and say, hey, why don't you come out with us on Sunday? We're going to drop acid and get into God, And it was a classic example of the blind leading the blind, Of people who were sincerely deceived, sincerely wrong, And 2.5 years later, after we started that first band, the Lord was faithful to draw us up to a place called Calvary Chapel in Costa Mesa, California. And for the first time in my life, the gospel was communicated to me. And for the first time in my life, lights went off, and I went, that's what it's all about. And I really discovered that what I've been looking for my whole life was Jesus Christ, the victorious Son of God who died on the cross, and 3 days later rose again from the dead. Go ahead.
All right.